Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's June 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and I'm a little late getting this done, so I'm going to move on through. There's not a lot of trades today. We had a pretty good rally, as you can see right here on the daily chart. Fairly nice rally. Uh, what it looks like, maybe notice we're coming down, and we notice how we bounced off the midline and then push through it. And usually you'll come back and test it from the other side before you push lower again. So maybe this was a retest. Maybe we're going to bounce and go higher. I don't know, but it's pretty common for prices to come back and test that midline before turning lower again. So we'll see what happens. Um, it's really hard to say at this point, but we could be headed to the trend line down here. We may bounce off this midline on the envelope. Um, the most likely target is going to be come back and see if we confirm this trend line or not. Um, we do have the two measured legs up, so we may be done to the upside and maybe only looking at going down now. It's just a little hard to tell from this. Um, at this point, we got to get through this midline before we're going to suspect we're going to go lower. Uh, Talking about the midline, the purple midline right up through here on the envelope bands. So anyway, there it is on the daily chart. You can see a nice rally. We started off with a range and then we rallied late. So let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart and we'll take a look at what it looks like. We'll go through the trades real quickly and then we'll call it a day. But let's flip over there. Okay, you can see the early range. We had one failed breakout, pulled back, made a higher low. Didn't quite get back to the midline, and then we spiked up and went into this channel. And I believe there's an overshoot here. If you look how it fits early, the midline's fitting, and even up in here, it's fitting pretty well. Maybe this is not a overshoot. Doesn't really come into play. It doesn't matter. To me, it looks like an overshoot because I believe the original range was more like, maybe even more like that. I think that even looks better there. So I'm guessing it was probably something like that. And this is an overshoot up here, which I drew another little small channel for, just so you can kind of see when it's over. And it kind of led to a reversal once we made that new high there. So that's how I saw it today. Let's zoom on in here. There was one news item at 9 o'clock. So, lately some of these lesser things like consumer confidence and a few of them that, if it's not FOMC, if it's FOMC, you want to be flat an hour prior. Some of these lesser things, um, 5 or 10 minutes is probably all you need. Just make sure you can get out safely. I wouldn't enter a new trade within 5 or 10 minutes of it coming out, but be flat by 5 or 10 minutes, and you should be good to go. Most of the time, these, except when there's a lot of volatility and things, most of these things like consumer confidence don't really matter. For a little while there, it didn't matter what it was. If it was red, it was throwing a spike and craziness all over the place. But that's kind of settled down now some. Doesn't mean it won't come back again, but just be aware of that. If we zoom in here, 7 o'clock came just as we're bottoming out. I don't see anything there. This looks a little like a reversal. It's on the wrong side of the EMA, though. There's a second entry here. Signal bar is kind of an inside bar. Got a big stem, so not a great signal bar. And then the next thing you know, we're testing the top. And once you got this triple test here, if you got enough room back, you really are expecting prices to come back to the trend line. And maybe we're just going to reverse if this is going to be a range day. So I like going short there just to see if you can get a scalp. You should get a scalp out of it, and then you can kind of go from there. And you can see you get a scalp. You probably don't get a runner on this one. You'd have to play this really aggressive to get any kind of runner because it does come back to get the break even stops. Runs down. We get a break, which is two legs up. And because we just came off the highs and no break and new low here, although you could say this was the trend down, this was the retest, but that moved really far just to be a retest. So this feels like another channel to me. So I think you got a two-legged correction here, which may lead to a measured move. It took a few minutes, but I think it does lead to a measured move. as you can see right there. We end up getting 2 legs down and it bounces. Um, but needless to say, you don't know how that's going to set up. But you get a second entry here. It's questionable if there's a close outside, so I marked it green. And that has moved a pretty good bit. There's not a lot of room. If there was plenty of room, if we were way back up here and the EMA's down here, I'd probably say just take it. But being that close to the EMA, it could bounce on you and make another high. You see it does end up making a new high before it went lower. So you got to be careful with that. And notice it runs down here and you get a double bottom and then it gives you a triple test. There's not a lot of space in there, but the fact that that makes 3 equal bottoms there and such a bullish bar, I like going long there. And there's plenty of room back to this high. We may run all the way back up to this high. Of course, it runs up, turns back down, and then it looks like we're in a range here. You do get a failed breakout, but no setup, and then it turns down and gives you a triple test here, no setup. There's a lower high here, but you got to go short right into support. Not a great idea. And the next thing you know, we're running down, and then you get your measured move and it bounces. And again, I don't see any way to go long there. Now you're back above the midline, so you need a really good setup, a good second entry. There is a second entry here, but that just looks way too congested to me. I just don't see any way to take that. And if you're patient, a few minutes later, you get a triple test here on a second entry long one, first entry, second entry. And this looks a little like a range here at first. I started off with it like this, but I think it ends up being more like this. But you get a triple test. There's plenty of room back to these highs. I like going long there. It ends up going all the way back up and testing the overnight highs of the range. And we're just chopping along. There is a triple test here. That's really tempting such a bullish or bearish bar. But notice look at all that support, and you got to go short right into it. And so I'd wait on something better, a lower high. You do get a lower high here, but it's not a very good signal bar. It's right back into the midline. And then next thing you know, it runs higher here and you get a failed breakout. So that's what you got to be careful of. Be careful trading out of this congestion, especially when you've already bounced along that midline on this range multiple times. That means it could, even though it pushed through this time, it could turn back up again. So you got to be super careful there. If you took that trade, I don't think you could get out of that. I don't think you get 6 ticks out of that. Pretty sure you don't. No, you can see that would have been a 4-tick failure because it would have had to push through. It's possible you could get filled on a limit order, but doubtful. Most of the time you got to see prices. Unless you get your order in there really quickly, you're probably going to see prices tick through it. But we do get the breakout. With the double top. This one does make it like 1 tick higher, but I don't think that's enough to matter to where you want to wait on a lower high. Very bearish bar, and this thing just kind of takes off. That's a nice setup. You do get a lower high here. That's moved too far to trade that as a lower high, so you're really trading that as a first entry with a not the best signal bar, so I don't like it. If there had been more room between here and the EMA when this broke lower and turned up, I'd have said trade that on the engulfing bar back to the EMA, but there's not. And I don't think you want to go long into the EMA even because it's not much room back to these highs or this last high. In this case, it doesn't end up mattering. And you get what looks like a reversal here, but it's right into these highs. And before you go long up here, you need to see this active support a few times, or you need to get this is a good example of what I'm always talking about. Don't look to buy, look to sell until you get either a bunch of tests across here, which we don't get. We just get 1 test. And noticed here, we never got a strong test off of it. Here we get one, but then suddenly we don't get a bunch of tests, but suddenly we get a strong trend going the other way. Well, that's what you need. You either need a bunch of tests here to go long, or you need a good trend. And this is a spike in channels. This is a strong trend. As you can see, a lot of buying came in, and we even overshot. The buying got so strong up here, we overshot the channel. That's what it looks like to me. So that's how I'm going to call it. But yeah, this is a nice move up. There's just not a lot of chance to trade it. And that's what happens on strong trends. You don't really get any pullbacks. You just go sideways. So you need You can play at range, but generally you want to wait till it comes back to the trend line, or you get a triple test with a good signal bar, or something of that nature. And you got to have room to scalp out in most cases. You don't have any of that here. You might have looked at this as a second entry. Um, there's not a lot of room back to that high. Let me just see if there's enough. This is very tempting, and there is enough room. So if you took that trade on the second entry, I wouldn't have any problem with it. You can't. There's nothing in here. You don't want to be going short yet, and I don't see anything I like there to go long. It shoots up here, goes sideways, shoots up again. There's another second entry there, but you can't go, and that's right at the measured move. Notice that dashed line. That's the measured move with original range. So we're expecting prices maybe to turn down here. And notice that it looks like it's going to set up a second entry. It never triggers. Then it moves higher, and again, it starts going longer. Here, you got to wait on a higher low, and that comes right here. I marked this blue. It's real close to being green. Um, just simply because I wasn't sure. Um, you got this. Let me just back up here. It's not a perfect signal bar, but I think that signal bar is okay because it's only 5 ticks, so it's very low risk. But the problem is you got a little resistance here, but we already broke higher, so it's like a little breakout pullback too. So I like that as a higher low here because we're not back to the trend line. And it looks like we just came off the high side. You gotta have a higher low or some kind of trap or something, and that higher low is going to somewhat act as a trap. Your hope here is that prices are going to at least retest this, and you got plenty of room for that. But this thing just takes off, and it basically gives you a break and a new high, and then you get another spike up, and it goes back into this new channel. I'm leery of trading any of this up here. I think you have to wait, and then even after that, instead of selling off, we just start working sideways back to the trend line, and that takes us into 230. We do get one more setup here right before 230, and you can see you get you could, even though there's not a lot of space in there, you got a test right here as well. So you've easily got a 1, 2, 3 triple test, but I'd probably call that a triple test too. And you get a nice signal bar there as well. There is a second entry here, but this one's a little congested right into the midline, and it doesn't really make the low. This is really your signal bar, so you can't really take that one. But when it comes back here again and tests it and gives you 3 equal lows and a nice signal bar, just take that, especially after just coming from the low to the high, back to the low. It's probably going back to the high. It struggles a little bit to get there, but you would have already scalped out of this and probably would have got stopped out before it even gets back to the high. And I don't know how far. That's at 232. That's like 3 minutes into 230. With that making a double top and such a bearish bar, you might, on the breakout, you might trade that. Just as long as there's room back to that midline, you might trade that trade. I mean, it's right there at the, I've always told you pretty much don't want to take trades after 230. But if you get one in the first 2 or 3 minutes after 230, I wouldn't be afraid to take it. So, especially if it's a really good, make sure it's a really good setup. But if you get a good one, don't be afraid to take it. The only problem is it's after 230. You can't take a loss after 230 because you're not going to get a chance to make it back 9 times out of 10. And so you don't want to end the day that late. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Um, it stopped raining here again, and it's been 95 to 100 degrees every day, and the pollen's back. So I'm struggling with my allergies again. So just excuse me if when I get to talking, I get to coughing some. So, but anyway, there it is. That's how I saw it today. We had what I like was going to be a range day. We moved the measure move, and you can see we found resistance to the tick there almost, and then we broke higher and just kept going higher. This was a really strong tick. This thing got strong up here. The buyers came roaring back in. Um, this is probably profit taking before the close. And we could just be coming back to test that midline on the daily chart that I told you, so we could turn down from here. But we'll have to see how it works out. So, but anyway, there it is. There's the trades I saw today. I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.